who is the head of the School of Economics, Politics and History at Kingston University, also a good friend, I think, of Yanis Varoufakis. This has just created more problems, hasn't it? Okay, you know, he's going to go back.
It's about time the European Union copped some problems. They have played absolute hardball with the Greeks here. They've completely denied the fact that they had a popular plebiscite in favour of fighting austerity. Now, much to my amazement, the scale of the no vote is so emphatic that Tsipras and Varoufakis can walk back in and say, we're an anti-austerity party, here is our anti-austerity negotiating position. We want, for example, a 3% deficit. We want about 60% of our debt restructured. And the hardball...
Restructured or written off?
Written off, I would actually, because we're talking about a debt ratio of 180%. A substantial part of that is because of the failure of the austerity program to do what it's supposed to do. The Greek economy is supposed to start growing 4 years ago, according to the OECD and IMF's projections. So a huge part of that ratio is due to the failure of the austerity program.
But there was some growth until Syriza came to power.
No, it wasn't growth. It was growth in the sense that prices were falling faster than GDP was falling, okay? Its nominal GDP was still falling all the way through. Only for a short while, prices were falling faster than GDP, and therefore the so-called real figures rose.
But look, Tsipras and Varoufakis say they don't want a Grexit, but if the ECB, IMF and European Union won't cough up any more funds, that's exactly what's going to happen.
That'll be the fault of the EU in that case, not the fault of the Greeks. I know, 100% know, the Yanis and Tsipras both want to stay inside the euro. They don't want to stay inside austerity. And that's the distinction they tried to make to the people. The people heard them and understood that. They wanted to end austerity. Austerity has been a failure. And the whole euro was designed around the principle of austerity in the belief that there'd never be a crisis. Well, they got it wrong.
But what about the structural changes that Europe has been demanding of Greece? Raising VAT, actually collecting taxes?
Yes, from the poor, not from the rich. The problem is Greece is the tax aren't paid by the rich.
Isn't it also the incompetence, perhaps, of Syriza not being able to do that?
He hasn't been given time to do it because he's dealing with incompetent politicians and bureaucracies, as I call them, in Brussels, rather than getting a chance to sit down and do the hard work in Greece. If the European Union's back off and give them more than 5 minutes without a crisis, and they've been delivering a crisis virtually every week right up till now, give them time off, then they can address those problems.
How dangerous is this for the Eurozone?
Quite dangerous, because if they don't give the Greeks a non-austerity position and let them stimulate the economy and grow out of it, and given the popular vote that's so strong in favour of being anti-austerity, this could be, if the European Union doesn't concede some ground to Greece, then all the other dominoes they're trying to use Greece to stop could fall, especially Spain.
But other countries who've been through these austerity measures, take, for example, Ireland.
This is the usual nonsense. Pardon me, but it's nonsense. You look at the figures...
I'm just putting some questions.
Sorry. My apologies. I don't mean to you. But this is the usual expectation people have that, Ireland did austerity, they succeeded. Greece has done austerity, they didn't. When you look at the scale of austerity, the amount of austerity dumped on Greece is about, in terms of the change in the budget, 4 times that was done to the Irish. Secondly, the Irish... Do you know what the major Irish export is? I learned this a couple of days ago. Cola essence. They have huge multinational productions, both physical facilities and software.
Also an amazingly low corporation tax as well.
Yeah, they've got this benefit. What people are saying is, why can't Greece be Ireland? Well, the answer is it can't. So it isn't true that austerity worked in Ireland and Greeks have been a failure because it should have worked there as well.
Yanis Varoufakis doesn't want a Grexit. Has he spoken to you, though, about the consequences of that happening?
Yes, and the main problem he has, and again, I apologise for my strong statement beforehand, the problem is that the Greek economy is a weak economy, even without the problems imposed by the euro. It doesn't have the broad industrial base, it doesn't have the strong export foundations and so on. It needs to import a lot of basic materials. If it were a stronger economy, then they would have exited already. So that's the fear. Now, I'm partially coming from a different position. I think if they actually wrote their debts off, a complete default, which is quite feasible, that would be a tremendous strengthening of them to give them the chance to get through the downturn and then have a devalued currency, which they could then devalue against the Germans, which they should have been able to do.
But wouldn't they be then locked out of capital markets? Or would you repeat what Argentina went through in 2000?
It takes about 3 weeks, because if you have a 180% debt to GDP ratio and then you've got 0, lenders know you've certainly got capacity to handle the debt straight away, so you don't get locked out.
Steve King, thank you very much
indeed
for joining us. Let's just take you back to that website.